Homage to Shakyamuni Buddha, homage to the wisdom warrior Manjushri, homage to compassionate lineage masters. The unsurpassed, profound Dharma is rarely encountered. Now that I am able to see, hear, receive, and uphold it, may I truly understand the Tathagata's genuine meaning. In order to liberate all sentient beings, let us give rise to the Supreme Bodhicitta. Next, we will discuss the story from the first chapter of the Platform Sutra of the sixth Patriarch. The comprehensive story in the very first chapter mainly tells of the esteemed Master Hongren transmitting the profound Dharma. He transmitted it to the sixth Patriarch, who should be the 12th in the lineage. This is roughly the topic being discussed. Earlier, in the middle of the night, he was given the teachings, and later he became enlightened. The sixth Patriarch, in this way, thus became his true and legitimate lineage disciple, and he instructed him as follows: safeguard and cherish this teaching, widely benefit sentient beings, let it spread in the future, and never let it be cut off. Everyone should also remember these verses. In fact, I have already discussed the true thought of Chan Buddhism earlier. One is to subdue one's own continuum, and the other is to widely benefit sentient beings. The very last and most important one is to widely spread and diligently promote the profound Dharma. It seems that I have talked about this before as well. This is the ultimate virtuous aspiration. I think earlier this year I mentioned it to some Dharma friends. I truly wish to practice diligently myself, and when I have a bit of ability, to spread the Dharma and benefit sentient beings. Actually, the true thought of Mahayana Buddhism, the future goal in life, should be based on these principles. Everyone here should also think, whether you are studying Chan Buddhism or Vajrayana Buddhism or any authentic form of Buddhism, we ourselves first should protect and care for ourselves well. We should use right understanding and right mindfulness, constantly observe and practice diligently. This is also especially important. And then, even if it is just a little bit, even the smallest benefit to sentient beings, benefiting sentient beings is also extremely important. I heard about a leukemia patient who had lost hope for his own life, but every single day he was truly grateful for the abundant blessings of the Buddha always. His own life had not ended as quickly as expected. He heard that there were often many annoying mosquitoes present in the hospital ward, causing considerable discomfort to the patients. When other individuals residing in his ward were preparing to eliminate the bothersome mosquitoes that had infiltrated their shared space, he would gently interject and persuade them, saying, "Please do not harm or kill these creatures. Instead, allow me the opportunity to make a compassionate offering on their behalf." He urged them not to kill, even though his whole face was swollen. Today I heard the story of a patient whose only wish was this. He used to love eating meat, and after his death he wanted to offer his own body as an act of generosity in the charnel ground, like a sky burial. This was his first wish. His second wish was that he felt very fortunate to have encountered the Dharma in this life. So he truly tried his very best to offer his entire body with all his strength before he ultimately died. He wanted others not to harm any sentient beings. So when I heard such a story, it was indeed the case that ordinary people, for the most part, had not studied Buddhism for very long before. But in just a short period of time, after coming into contact with some Buddhist teachings, they had such realizations. So I think that for those of us who have studied Buddhism for many years, perhaps we should also ask ourselves, when we truly reach the end of our lives, no matter how wonderful or beautiful it is, a beautiful bubble will eventually burst. This is the natural characteristic of conditioned phenomena. So I truly think that when each and every one of us faces the inevitable reality of death, faces the ultimate final crisis, let's carefully consider what kind of solemn vows we would genuinely make and what profound thoughts we would deeply have in those crucial moments. I hope everyone will reflect on this as well. At the same time, we need to understand the influence of Chan Buddhism on the overall Buddhist thought. What kind of theory does it ultimately reveal as its goal? This is something everyone should pay attention to as well. Next, it is widely said that at that particular time, the revered fifth patriarch was about to give the esteemed sixth patriarch a truly final and profound verse of spiritual enlightenment. Listen to my verse. Sentient beings come to sow seeds. From the ground of cause, the fruit is born again. The insentient, having no seeds, have no nature, and thus no birth. I have read the commentaries by some other great masters in China. When they explain it, they say that all living beings, all sentient beings with activity, can plant the seeds of virtue in the fertile field of blessings of the three jewels, the precious Buddha, Dharma, and Sangha. Because of such causes and conditions, these seeds gradually mature at the stage of cause, and by the time of fruition, all the causes and conditions can ripen to attain Buddhahood, perfect all virtues, and so on. But as for insentient things, lifeless things like stones and wood, these insentient dharmas, because they cannot serve as a field of merit, they are unable to plant seeds. Their very nature is also without inherent nature, and for this reason, in the end, they do not generate merit or produce ripened results. This is one way of explaining it, but personally, I wonder if, in this case, perhaps such an enlightenment verse itself is generally not explained according to the Chan tradition. It depends directly on one's personal insight, on how each individual understands it. And there are also such traditions, but I think if we must explain it, perhaps interpreting it from the perspective of the two truths would be more appropriate. On this point, I hope you will consider and reflect on it yourselves. Although I have not seen such an explanation before, we should understand from the conventional world that all sentient beings in the world have also planted virtuous roots. Through the causal ground, continually progressing through the 5 paths and 10 bhumis, one can ultimately attain Buddhahood and so on. All causes and conditions, as well as sentient beings, are just as described in the Entering the Middle Way, Madhyamakavatara. In the conventional world, so-called acceptance and rejection, good and evil and so forth, all exist without error. But in the ultimate sense, sentient beings do not exist, nor does the planting of seeds exist. Everything is without inherent nature, unborn. In the ultimate sense, all is completely empty. Therefore, this verse speaks of the appearance in the conventional world and the ultimate reality. That is to say, from the perspective of appearances, all phenomena truly exist without error, and cause and effect are also unfailing. But in the ultimate sense, in the end, everything is completely free from the 4 extremes and the 8 elaborations. In such a state, all sentient and insentient beings alike are all of the same Dharma nature, and there is fundamentally no conceptual elaboration at all. Is this explanation appropriate? You can reflect on it according to your own understanding. Next, the 5th Patriarch continued speaking to the 6th Patriarch. The Patriarch further said, "In the past, when Master Bodhidharma first came to this land, people did not believe in him. So he passed down this robe as a symbol of faith to be handed down from generation to generation." After explaining this verse of enlightenment, he continued to speak to the 6th Patriarch. In the past, Patriarch Bodhidharma came from India. He was once a prince, a truly remarkable individual, especially considering his origins and early life in the ancient and culturally rich land of India. Later in his journey, he eventually came to the Eastern land, which is more precisely known as China, because at that time, in the Chan, Zen tradition, he was regarded as the first patriarch. Then he passed it on to the 2nd Patriarch, then the 3rd, the 4th, and the 4th Patriarch passed it to the 5th, with each transmission in this process, because people at the time did not really understand the lineage of the Patriarch's teachings. And in addition, without any basis or proof, they were also not very trusting. So, in order to truly and unequivocally prove that his revered master had indeed passed down all the sacred robes and precious bowls to him, thereby formally designating him as the legitimate successor, and in order to effectively transmit such a significant and venerable lineage at that crucial time, the symbolic robe and the accompanying bowl served as an undeniable and tangible token of profound faith and authentic spiritual authority. They were a symbol and representation that everyone believed in. This was passed down continuously from one generation to the next, all the way to the 5th Patriarch at that time, maintaining an unbroken lineage. In other words, from Bodhidharma to myself now, because of the historical context and various reasons related to people's beliefs at the time, it was absolutely necessary that every single patriarch had such a definitive proof or credential. In fact, this specific kind of spiritual transmission did indeed genuinely exist and was well documented in the rich history of Chinese Buddhism. This also includes others, such as Tibetan Buddhism. For example, a Vajra Acharya would also typically pass on his sacred Vajra bell and his Vajra scepter to his chosen lineage disciples, which is also a truly unique and significant form of spiritual transmission. Or, in other words, this profound tradition of spiritual transmission also prominently exists in Tibet, maintaining its ancient practices and deep cultural roots. When Chan Buddhism first arrived, as everyone knows, at the very beginning in China, including many emperors, they didn't really approve of it. Looking at history, why is Shaolin Temple so famous now? Because at that time, Bodhidharma, due to various causes and conditions, it is said that on the back mountain of Shaolin Temple, there is a cave where Bodhidharma sat facing the wall of the mountain for 9 years. Such a long time. All the historical accounts and records from that particular period in time are now meticulously documented and preserved in a multitude of diverse and ancient texts. Subsequently, when he eventually discovered and recognized the authentic and genuine Dharma vessel, a sacred and profound artifact, he then departed from that specific location. In fact, even in the present day, in a very limited number of secluded and revered temples, such as other ancestral temples of Chan Buddhism, are regarded as the birthplace of Chan Buddhism. Strictly speaking, that place should be called the birthplace of Chan Buddhism. Perhaps that would be more appropriate. Of course, it is important to note that other temples also frequently hold various interesting events and provide different, detailed written explanations for visitors. There may be other reasons for this. Looking at the history of Chan Buddhism in China, Shaolin Temple indeed should, from a historical perspective, be considered the original ancestral temple of Chan Buddhism. Because at that time, Patriarch Bodhidharma was there, and later when he left, I've heard many people say that the so-called Shaolin Kung Fu nowadays, in its current form, is not truly authentic. Many movies and many people internationally all think that Chinese monks can practice martial arts. When we're out and about, perhaps traveling at a busy airport or a bustling train station, we often encounter various situations. If someone sees a completely shaved head there, they will invariably say, "Amitabha, do you truly know Shaolin Kung Fu?" Some of our younger students, when they see us with our distinctly shaved heads, they immediately start imitating various martial arts movements themselves, and right in front of us, they will respectfully say Amitabha first as a greeting. Actually, the reason for this is that back in the very beginning, when the revered Patriarch Bodhidharma eventually left that ancient cave, much later, some observant monks from the renowned Shaolin Temple discovered a mysterious iron box there. This particular box was securely sealed with a thick layer of wax. They burned it in a fire, and after opening it, they found 2 scriptures inside. One of the scriptures was the Yi Jin Jing, muscle tendon changing classic, which we often talk about nowadays, and the other was the Ji Shui Jing, marrow cleansing classic. Perhaps everyone is quite familiar with the Yi Jin Jing. In Jin Yong's renowned novels in the past, it was also very frequently mentioned. When Mo Yan, who recently and deservedly won the prestigious Nobel Prize, formally received his award, many Chinese people who love reading novels felt that many of Mo Yan's acclaimed novels weren't quite as good as Jin Yong's. Jin Yong, in his own right, wrote significantly better. Indeed, quite a substantial number of people commented that Jin Yong was, without a doubt, superior. Actually, some of Jin Yong's ideas are also somewhat related to religion. It's said that even now, many people still think so. Including Mo Yan's novels like Life and Death Are Wearing Me Out, many also believe that a lot of the ideas are drawn from Buddhism. In any case, there's no need for us to comment on this. But mainly at the beginning of the Yi Jin Jing, it's said that there is a method for regulating the body's channels and vital points, including practices like meditation and Zen contemplation. At first, there were various interpretations regarding the translation of these 2 classics. At that time, many people didn't know because these 2 sutras were in Sanskrit. Later, since Huike understood Sanskrit, he was asked to translate them. Afterwards, some monks went to Mount Ime to invite Banlamiti to translate them as well. After the translation, these 2 scriptures were essentially considered as one. By as one, it probably means they were like 2 volumes of the same work with basically the same content. Later, based on this profound and rich content, the venerable Shaolin Temple meticulously developed a truly unique and distinctive style of monk kung fu. Later on, it seems quite clear that when Li Shimin was diligently preparing to unify the entire country, he sought their assistance. He once encountered a particularly dangerous situation. 3 monks skilled in martial arts helped him and saved his life. Afterwards, in order to repay this kindness, from then on, the monks of Shaolin Temple were allowed to eat meat, break the precept against killing, and drink alcohol. This was also to help protect the country at the time. When he later became emperor, he even established a special monastic corps. It is said that some claimed they were allowed to carry weapons, while others said they were not. Actually, by that time, Shaolin martial arts had already emerged. In a certain and very real sense, according to the sacred scriptures, it wasn't necessarily all about fighting or martial arts with others. But later on, due to historical circumstances, political considerations, and various other significant reasons, however, nowadays Chinese Buddhism compared to others, Shaolin Kung Fu and other Buddhist sects or religions are quite different in many ways. There are different reasons for this. Because of these reasons, around the 1970s and 1980s, including Jet Li, who also starred in many related films about this topic, after that, everyone in the world knew about it. Especially when they see someone wearing monk's robes, the first thought that comes to mind is, it's not necessarily, oh, here is the embodiment of the three jewels, here to pray. That's not always what people think. The first thought is, this monk must know how to fight. I wouldn't dare mess with him, otherwise, if I did, he might. But actually, many monks don't know how to fight at all. They don't know Shaolin Kung Fu. But for many people, this is just a result of media hype. There are also various other historical reasons for this. But in fact, real monastics aren't necessarily like that either. Still, this could also be considered a kind of wondrous power of Chan Buddhism. Because someone who truly possesses Chan, whether walking, standing, sitting, or lying down, whether practicing methods or not, at any time, in any situation, if they abide in Chan, they can also liberate countless sentient beings. We can put it this way as well. In any case, the crucial point to understand is that from the revered Bodhidharma all the way to the fifth patriarch, the patriarchs were represented by the passing down of the robe and bowl. But the Dharma itself is transmitted from mind to mind, so that each person awakens and understands on their own. Since ancient times, Buddhas have only transmitted the true nature, and masters have secretly entrusted the original mind. The robe has become a source of dispute, so you are told not to pass it on. In fact, Buddhism does not actually rely on external things like monastic robes or vajra bells and scepters. It is not transmitted in this way. The so-called Dharma should be divided into the Dharma of teachings and the Dharma of realization. The Dharma of teachings is transmitted through sound. We often give oral transmission and so on in this manner. As for the mind Dharma, the so-called Dharma of realization, it is transmitted from mind to mind. Some masters often pass down their inner wisdom, compassion, and the states they have realized, so that after their disciples attain enlightenment, they naturally achieve liberation. In other words, once you realize the meaning of the Dharma, you are naturally liberated. It has always been this way since ancient times. Between Buddhas, in Tibetan Buddhism, this is called the transmission of the Tathagata's secret intention. Between Buddhas, although there is no oral transmission as we know it, in reality, within the continuum of Samantabhadra Tathagata, Amitabha Buddha or Shakyamuni Buddha are in mutual resonance, and the wisdom and compassion of one Tathagata are naturally attained by another Tathagata. According to Tibetan Buddhism, this is called the transmission of the Tathagata's secret intention. The transmission of the Tathagata's secret intention has been passed down gradually. In Tibetan Buddhism, this is called the Vidyadhara symbolic transmission. Many masters have received this as a unique transmission, passed down secretly between masters. In the past, there were also many such unique transmissions. This continued all the way to the time of the fifth patriarch, which was essentially a unique transmission. Take, for example, the Longchen Yingtik teachings. Padmasambhava passed them down continuously to many masters who received the Vidyadhara symbolic transmission later on. Later, when it came to the personal oral transmission, it began to spread more widely. That's how it was. He said this is how it was passed down. If it is passed down through the robe and bowl, it becomes a source of dispute. Therefore, after the sixth patriarch Hui Ning, it was decided not to pass it down any further. At this point, I hope everyone understands that there is something you must be clear about. Nowadays, many people, including some scholars who study history, often say that Chan Buddhism was especially prosperous in China in earlier times. After the sixth patriarch, it was no longer passed down. This view is unreasonable. Why is that? The transmission of the robe and bowl stopped at this point, but the Dharma did not stop. After the sixth patriarch, it was required to continue spreading the Dharma. As mentioned earlier, widely benefit sentient beings, let it spread into the future, do not let it be cut off. In the future, you should widely benefit sentient beings, and the Dharma must not be cut off. It should always be passed down. So now many people think, and even some who study Chan Buddhism often say, after the sixth patriarch, it no longer existed. Some say that this Dharma lineage now seems impossible to truly continue. Actually, the transmission of the robe and bowl after the fifth patriarch, he had supernatural powers and knew all kinds of future situations, so he did not pass it on exclusively anymore. From then on, after the sixth patriarch, you should also not pass down the robe and bowl anymore. Perhaps at that time, the situation regarding the robe and bowl was not very favorable. There were reasons for this as well, so after that, there was no need to pass it down. However, it was never said that the Dharma of Chan Buddhism was interrupted because of this. It has never been broken and continues to this day. As I mentioned at the beginning, Chan Buddhism has different lineages and various Dharma transmissions. There have been many eminent monks and great virtuous ones, especially in the Han region, whether among lay practitioners or within the monastic community. There are indeed quite a few people who have attained realization in Chan Buddhism. If you choose to pass on this sacred robe, your very life will undoubtedly hang by a very precarious thread. You absolutely must leave this place quickly and without delay, for I genuinely fear that others may indeed seek to harm you. If you continue to pass down this revered robe and this sacred bowl in this manner, your precious life will truly be in great and imminent danger, hanging by a mere thread, making your situation extremely perilous and uncertain. So the robe and bowl should no longer be passed down, because if the robe and bowl continue to be passed on, given the circumstances at that time, even Master Huineng himself might not necessarily be able to fully accomplish all the glorious undertakings of spreading the Dharma and benefiting sentient beings in his lifetime. It might not turn out that way. Moreover, now that I have transmitted the Dharma to you, you must leave as soon as possible, because it was in the middle of the night he was in the master's and received the robe and bowl from him. Otherwise, I'm afraid some people might try to harm you, because he was a barbarian, an outsider, and also someone quite different within their specific community. Compared to people like Shenxiu and others, he was not considered worthy at all, and others felt the same way. On top of that, he had not formally become a monk, so it was very dangerous, and that's why he was told to leave as soon as possible. Otherwise, someone might indeed try to harm him. Huineng, feeling a sense of uncertainty, asked, "Where exactly should I go from here?" The wise master thoughtfully replied, "You should stop at a place named Huai and make sure to hide yourself at a place named Hui." At that time, Huineng said, "After I have received this profound Dharma, this sacred teaching, where exactly should I go from here?" He was urgently told to depart quickly that very night without delay. So I wondered, "Master, could you please tell me where precisely should I direct my steps now? There is absolutely nowhere for me to go." The venerable fifth patriarch, understanding the gravity of the situation, firmly yet compassionately told him, "You must leave this place immediately. You should direct your journey to a specific location that prominently features the character Huai within its very name. This place is presently recognized as Huaiji County, which is situated within the vibrant and historically rich province of Guangdong. Even in the present day, the spiritual tradition of Buddhism continues to thrive and flourish with remarkable prosperity in this particular region. Furthermore, it was in this very county that the revered sixth patriarch chose to reside for an extended period of time. He imparted a significant instruction, stating quite clearly that once you arrive at Huaiji, you should indeed cease your travels there and proceed no further beyond that point. Then, if you encounter the character Hui, it refers to Sihui. When you arrive at that place, you should temporarily hide yourself and stay concealed. Later on, it seems that in the Platform Sutra, there is still mention of this. In Sihui, he lived for about 15 years together with hunters. Because the situation was rather complicated at the time, he stayed there continuously. It is said that in Huaiji, he first presented himself as a farmer, often helping the local people and treating them. He built Buddhist halls in many places there. They say that now it's just a small Huaiji county. Apparently, there are more than 30 temples there. There are also more than 20 places named after the Buddha or with the word Buddha in their names. Quite a lot. So we can see this from history as well. The influence of one person in a place can be very significant. Indeed, when one person lives there, many people around him are inspired, and in many places as well. Because in the past, it seemed like you didn't need to go through any formalities or approvals. As long as you had the ability yourself. Just like in our Tibetan regions, it's very easy for many great monks and masters to build temples wherever they want. Oh, I'll just build a temple there. As long as you have the ability, it's quite convenient. But now it's not necessarily that easy anymore. In any case, in the future, when many of us here return to our respective places, first of all in our hearts, even if it's just towards those around us, if some Dharma friends really can't build a temple, they can build what is called a retreat hut instead. The influence on the people around is still quite good. There are such examples. So at that time, he requested to find this place. Indeed, the fifth patriarch possessed truly great spiritual powers. His profound foresight into the future was truly, truly remarkable and extraordinary. He explained it like this. At the stroke of midnight, Huineng reverently received the sacred robe and the begging bowl, saying thoughtfully, I am originally from the southern regions and have never truly known the intricate mountain paths here. How then can I possibly find my way out to the distant river mouth? The Venerable Fifth Patriarch calmly replied, You need not worry yourself unduly about such matters. At that precise moment, Huineng said, in the deep middle of the night, after he had respectfully received the sacred robe and the begging bowl, after the master gave him the robe and bowl, he said, I, Huineng, am originally from the south. I have no idea about the mountain paths here at all. Next is the 12th question. Huineng leaves the fifth patriarch. The following mainly describes this process. Earlier, it was about how he received the Dharma. Now it talks about the entire process of Huineng leaving him. He said, I have never known the mountain paths. He really had no idea about the mountain paths here. At that particular time, the master explicitly told him to go to Huaiji, to proceed directly to that specific place. How exactly was he supposed to get to the river mouth? He might very well have to take a boat across the wide river. That's precisely what was absolutely needed. So, at night, he was completely all alone, entirely by himself. Perhaps in that remote place, the winding roads were also quite complicated and challenging to navigate. Even though he had received the robe and bowl, he still didn't quite know exactly how to depart from the premises at night. At that time, the fifth patriarch said, You don't need to worry, I can personally escort you. It's truly not an easy task being a master. Not only do you have to diligently help him attain the sacred Dharma, but you also have to personally send him all the way there, ensuring his safe arrival. The Venerable Patriarch accompanied him all the way to the bustling Jujing post station. Upon their arrival, the Patriarch specifically instructed him to carefully board the waiting boat, ensuring his safe passage. Then, in a truly remarkable and unexpected gesture of humility and dedication, the fifth Patriarch himself took up the oars, preparing to row the boat across the expansive river. It was clear that they needed to traverse the flowing waters, and when they eventually made their crossing, it was likely that they shared a small, humble boat together. After the disciple had comfortably settled onto the boat, the fifth patriarch personally commenced the arduous task of rowing the vessel across the river. At that moment, Huineng said this. Huineng respectfully said, Master, please do sit down. Your humble disciple should truly be the one to row the boat. It really wasn't right for the master to be rowing the boat. It was the middle of the night, and they were still like that. I recall watching a documentary some time ago, and it comprehensively covered all of these intricate details. In that particular documentary, the disciple, showing great respect and initiative, firmly stated, It is my duty and responsibility to handle the rowing. Please allow me to take the oars and row the boat, while you, my esteemed teacher, can comfortably sit down and rest. The patriarch said, It is fitting that I ferry you. Now I should be the one to ferry you. Actually, I ferry you has two meanings. One important thing is that when I am personally crossing the flowing river, I will row the boat to ferry you across the water. There's another meaning as well. Right now, in terms of removing obstacles in all aspects, I still need to help you and guide you to liberation. Then Huineng said this. Huineng said, When deluded, the master ferries. When awakened, one ferries oneself. Though the word ferry is the same, its application is different. He said, when one is confused, of course it is necessary for the master to teach the Dharma and liberate me. But once you have attained enlightenment, it's not possible for the master to keep ferrying you forever. The so-called liberation may have the same name, but the methods used are different. There is a difference between self-liberation and being liberated by others, between enlightenment and confusion. When enlightened, you no longer need the master to ferry you. You can rely on your own strength. But when confused, you still need the master. In other words, it means that now we may be close to the shore. At this point, I can leave on my own. The master may row the boat back. The master will definitely return at night. Huineng was born in a remote region. My speech was not proper, and I received the Dharma from Master. Now that I have attained enlightenment, I should rely on my own nature to liberate myself. He also expressed special gratitude to his master. Huineng was originally born in a very remote and isolated place. Moreover, his speech did not sound particularly wise or capable. In all aspects, he did not seem like such a person either. Moreover, his spoken accent was very strong and pronounced, certainly not standard at all. Although on the surface, he didn't outwardly seem like anything particularly special or remarkable at all. In actual fact, people are inherently different. Some individuals possess a very good and profound inner realization. But on the surface, whether it's his language, appearance, or level of education, in every aspect, he was not like those from big cities. Take Master Shenshu, for example. Whether in speech or in his followers, in many ways he was indeed especially mature. But among the several hundred disciples who were under the Master's guidance, He seemed quite immature. This was something the sixth patriarch himself was aware of. However, his insight was truly very exceptional indeed. So here he says, relying deeply and completely on the profound and sacred transmission of the Dharma from his revered master, I have now, through dedicated practice, truly attained a state of profound enlightenment and can, with this newfound wisdom, fully and completely liberate myself from all suffering. Does this mean that after getting on the boat, he rows the boat across by himself? How did the documentary describe it? They crossed the river together, right? He was sent across. Is it like this here? Did he cross the river by himself? Or it seems here he said he crossed by himself. He rowed it once, then told the master, "No need, you can go back now. I have attained enlightenment myself. I can cross on my own. I will row by myself." I do know how to row a boat. Once I personally rowed by myself on a small, tranquil river. I can still confidently do it even now. It truly seems, literally speaking, did he actually reach the other shore? He most probably did, successfully navigating the waters. After reaching the other shore, he then deliberately went back. This profound action and its underlying meaning are precisely what the revered fifth patriarch said and emphasized. The patriarch said, "Yes, yes, from now on, the propagation of the Dharma depends on your great deeds. You will leave for 3 years, and only then will I pass away. Now go well, strive towards the south, and do not reveal this too soon, for it is difficult for the Dharma to arise." At that time, the fifth patriarch replied, "Yes, yes, the future of the Dharma. Actually, what is called self-liberation and liberating others should refer to spreading the Dharma and attaining one's own liberation." The fifth patriarch also fully acknowledged the principles he spoke of. Yes, the future of the Dharma should rely on your intention and your actions. It should be spread through the various causes and conditions by which you benefit sentient beings, your great deeds. But there is one condition. After you leave in another 3 years, I will depart from this world. Later, it turned out that the fifth patriarch was 71 years old at that time. He passed away at the age of 74, and it was at that time in Huangmei that he entered parinirvana. The sixth patriarch also attained the Dharma at Dongshan, as is often mentioned. Near Huangmei at Dongshan, there is the stupa of the fifth patriarch. I have been there before. When I visited, I was told that inside there is a patriarch hall. Originally, it was a hall housing the true body, but it seems it was destroyed many times over the years. Especially in the end, the physical body was completely destroyed. Now, there is only a statue. Actually, at the fifth patriarch temple, there are still many relics, such as the Dharma teaching platform he used at the time, and many other remains. It's a wonderful place, blessed with spiritual power. At that specific moment in time, he clearly and unequivocally stated, "I will certainly depart from this world within a period of 3 years from this very day. Therefore, it is absolutely essential that you make your departure immediately." He told him to take care of himself and make an effort to go south. At that time, he predicted that he should go to the south. After arriving in the south, don't start teaching the Dharma right away. Because the conditions are not yet ripe, no matter how eager you are to spread the Buddha's teachings now, I'm afraid, on one hand, it might bring some adverse circumstances for you. Secondly, even if you do possess the knowledge and inclination to teach, the prevailing conditions and circumstances for effectively imparting the profound Dharma may not yet be truly and fully mature. There are indeed some highly revered lamas who genuinely possess extraordinary and verifiable supernatural abilities, and it is these enlightened individuals who often articulate profound statements such as this, based on their deep wisdom and spiritual insight. Some individuals, entirely without such inherent or innate abilities, meticulously make their predictions and profound prophecies based solely upon careful and extensive observation of various phenomena. Even within our institute in the distant past, our deeply revered and highly respected teacher also very frequently and consistently engaged in this precise practice, offering his insightful foresight. For example, with Kenpos and Kenmos, he would require them not to leave for 3 years or not to leave for 2 years. There are such instructions as well. Later, here at our Vajra demon-subduing land, it was the same. Many Dharma teachers, Kenpos and Kenmos, would also often encounter this situation where, according to the teacher's instructions, they were not allowed to leave for 3 years. They would expound the Dharma extensively within, but outside, the conditions might not necessarily be ripe. However, later on, there were indeed some Dharma friends who listened and followed these instructions. Afterwards, when they took on disciples and engaged in the work of spreading the Dharma and benefiting beings, they did comparatively very well. Some people, after receiving their certificates, left in less than a year. But after leaving, some passed away and some indeed stayed outside. Not to mention being a Dharma teacher, they didn't even have the ability to be a tutor. They themselves were also drifting about, and some had already returned to lay life. In many respects, let alone making any contribution to the Dharma, some of their actions even had various negative impacts on Buddhism. There are such cases as well. This too may be a kind of dependent origination. Therefore, when we transmit the Dharma, we also rely on the requirements set by the great masters of the past. Perhaps in our own lives, the causes and conditions for benefiting sentient beings may or may not be mature. Recently, during our debates, we discussed whether the Buddha can actually liberate those without karmic connection. In fact, it's not that the Buddha doesn't save those without connection, but rather that the conditions for saving them have not yet matured. If the conditions haven't matured, no matter how much you want to help, it may not be possible. There was once a Dharma friend who came here and seemed to have been ordained for 6 months. Later I advised him, for now, just study a bit more, don't leave yet. But his aspiration to spread the Dharma was extremely strong. He said that even in his dreams he was thinking about liberating sentient beings and that he just couldn't stay, he had to leave. He said the sentient beings in his hometown were especially pitiable. His initial motivation, his intention from the very beginning was actually very good. I thought it seemed like he wasn't thinking about anything else. No matter what I said or how I tried to persuade him, it didn't work. In the end, he quietly left. But after he left, things didn't turn out as ideal as expected. So, although we don't possess the unobstructed wisdom of the great masters of the past, we can still make reasonable inferences. Because elderly people, whether they're 80 or 70 years old, still possess a certain remarkable ability to accurately predict, often concerning the future actions and behaviors of certain specific individuals. Therefore, I sincerely hope that in the days and times to come, whether it's the esteemed teachers or some of the wise Dharma masters, some of the insightful things they say and impart to you are still genuinely worth your careful attention and consideration. If they say not to spread the teachings for the time being, then when the right conditions come together, everything will fall into place easily. When the conditions are ripe, everything becomes very easy. After Huineng bid farewell to the revered patriarch, he immediately set out for the south, and after a journey of 2 full months, he finally arrived at the significant Dayu Ridge. At that time, he left. One could also say he took leave of his master, the 5th patriarch. Then, with a determined spirit, he set out on foot, embarking upon his journey toward the south. Didn't the venerable master explicitly state before that he should indeed proceed southward? After a period of 2 full months, he eventually reached the significant landmark known as Dayu Ridge. He had now, at long last, arrived precisely at the destined place that had been clearly foretold to him. Actually, I once diligently looked for the comprehensive biography of the esteemed Master Huineng, but regrettably I couldn't manage to find it anywhere. Previously, the Venerable Elder Master Zhuyun had mentioned his beloved grandmother. It appears that in the original extensive filming of 100 Years of Zhuyun, this particular detail was indeed included and documented. Under her influence, she would read the biography of the 6th Patriarch, Master Huineng, every day. That's precisely how they vividly portrayed it in the actual film at that particular time. But in fact, it seems that this isn't in the chronicle, and maybe not in Zhuyun's biography either. Actually, the real biography of Huineng, apart from what's in the Platform Sutra, there is a section in the record of the transmission of the lamp, but that's not very extensive either. So, a truly detailed account of his life, describing everything he went through, as for a very few great masters. Every action, every year, the entire process of spreading the Dharma and benefiting sentient beings and their cultivation journey are not described in great detail. Roughly speaking, by the time he reached the south, 2 months had already passed. When he first started relying on a spiritual teacher, more than a month had already gone by. Now, after leaving from a very distant place, after a long and arduous journey, he finally, at last, arrived at his intended destination. Then, after the 5th Patriarch sent off the 6th Patriarch, he himself returned to the monastery. After the 5th Patriarch returned, he did not appear in the Dharma hall for several days. The assembly became suspicious and went to ask him, saying, "Master, are you feeling unwell or troubled?" For many days, the 5th Patriarch did not go to the Dharma hall. At that time, he had several hundred followers, and every day they would recite scriptures and listen to Dharma talks. Everyone was getting anxious, so some representatives went to ask him, "Master, why have you not come to teach or lead the recitations these past few days? You have always been so diligent, but have you been unwell recently? Are you sick? Or are you perhaps feeling quite down?" Has the venerable and respected master been troubled by something lately? What exactly is the matter? At that significant time, the fifth patriarch thoughtfully replied, he clearly said, I am not truly ill. The sacred robe and the Dharma have already gone south, as was destined. He said, actually, I am not sick at all, and my mood is quite good. Recently, there hasn't been anything at all to truly upset me. Emotionally, I am perfectly fine and quite content. But there is one very important thing I need to tell you. I have already, with careful consideration, passed on my sacred robe and my humble bowl to someone else, a worthy successor. Here he let it slip. The transmission has gone to the south. If he hadn't mentioned this, those who later tried to track it down might not have been able to find it. But by mentioning the robe and Dharma, perhaps there weren't many roads at that time, so just saying to the south might have meant there was only one route. For example, if we go from here to Seda, then those who are tracking would head in that direction. He said the robe and Dharma had been transmitted over there. Question, who was it passed on to? He replied, the capable one receives it. Only then did everyone understand. Afterwards, several hundred people came, wanting to seize the robe and bowl, because at that time they were especially concerned about the robe and bowl, so they asked. Everyone was particularly anxious, so who exactly was it passed on to? At first, the fifth patriarch said, the capable one receives it. In Han Chinese regions, generally speaking, it means the one with ability gets it. From another perspective, you could put it this way. On one hand, the capable one refers to Huineng. Huineng had already received the robe and bowl, so it can be understood from both perspectives. At that particular moment in time, everyone in the vicinity already knew the significant news, primarily because Huineng, a prominent figure, had suddenly and unexpectedly disappeared from their midst. Even the individuals working diligently in the kitchen, who were often privy to various happenings, were heard remarking recently that particular person who arrived from a distant and faraway place has quite abruptly gone missing without a trace. Perhaps the master had already returned to the dormitory the next morning, but maybe the master's return journey took a day or two, because he had escorted him quite far. He came back the next day. Or maybe the master was a bit tired and couldn't attend the assembly the next day. There could have been all sorts of reasons. At that time, everyone already knew. On top of that, the master said that the transmission had already gone to the south. At that time, they gathered several hundred people together. They were diligently preparing to swiftly snatch the sacred robe and precious bowl back from the venerable Huineng, their intentions clear and resolute. They all hated him deeply. How could such a barbarian? Even our own Master Shenshu here did not receive it. There were so many other talented people as well, yet none of them received the Dharma and the robe. He must have tried all sorts of ways to take the Dharma and the robe from the master's hands and bring them down. They insisted on taking them back no matter what. But looking back at history, at that time, Shenshu was actually very tolerant. He tried to dissuade them from going. Since this was the master's will, we should show respect and seek the Dharma from him in the future. Everyone, please don't go. Some of the people present stopped because of Shengshu's earnest persuasion. However, some other individuals simply did not listen at all. So in this particular regard, we should also fully understand and comprehend that Shenshu indeed did not receive the Dharma. However, from a different perspective, he truly played a remarkably good and significant role in the unfolding events. His overall public image and personal demeanor were consistently quite tolerant and understanding, demonstrating that he possessed such an exceptionally broad and magnanimous mind, which was truly admirable. His later work in spreading the Dharma and benefiting sentient beings was also extremely vast. Actually, every master, in the process of transmitting the Dharma or training disciples, may not appear to treat everyone completely equally on the surface. For example, when you receive a Dharma teacher's certificate or something similar, some people in their hearts tend to think very highly of themselves, often with an inflated sense of their own importance. However, they may not actually possess the genuine wisdom, the necessary ability, or the true virtue that is genuinely required. However, they might not realize this themselves. At that time, if Shengshu had not been such a person, he might have thought, everyone acknowledges me as the senior seat. If I haven't received it, how could this person have already received it? He might have demanded that everyone, since he was after all the senior seat, help him to take it back, urging them, yeah, you all should seize it back. But in reality, even if you seize the robe and bowl, you may not be able to seize the Dharma itself. People might say this, but in fact, he did not say so. So these are historical issues. I think that for any Buddhist, during the process of relying on a teacher, no matter what recognition or arrangements the teacher makes, we should not have a particularly narrow mindset. Currently, in some individual Dharma centers, it is true that many actions of the teacher, including some lay Buddhist groups, are met with constant dissatisfaction regarding certain methods and behaviors of the teacher's guidance. Within their own distinct circles, all kinds of various conflicts often arise and frequently occur as well. At the very same time, certain specific groups often slander their own revered lineage teachers, frequently defaming, disparaging, and even undermining them. As a result, both themselves and others may be ruined, and it might not have much real significance. In the future, this may not be of much help to one's own practice or to spreading the Dharma and benefiting sentient beings. So from this, we can see that Master Shenshu was truly remarkable. At this crucial moment, hundreds of determined individuals began to head south with great urgency in relentless pursuit. Among this diverse group was a distinguished layman known by the surname Chen, whose personal name was Huiming. Huiming was not just any follower, he was a devoted and recognized disciple within the esteemed lineage of the fifth patriarch, a spiritual leader of profound influence. Prior to his spiritual calling, Huiming had a notable career, having served with distinction as a fourth-rank general, a position of considerable authority and respect within the military hierarchy of his time. In the past, official ranks ranged from 1st to 9th grade, and both government officials and the military had such ranks. He had served in the military before, and it is said he was a descendant of Emperor Xuan of the Chen dynasty. Judging from his family background, Huiming was actually quite well off. He had a rough and impetuous temperament, was extremely diligent in seeking the way, and was the first among the group to catch up with Huineng. He has a very rough and impatient personality, kind of careless and blunt. He looks a bit... Well, because he served in the military, it doesn't necessarily mean he's wise, but still. Some do, though. We also have many people here who have served in the military. I really shouldn't say that particular thing, otherwise you might genuinely get quite upset, and that certainly wouldn't be good at all for anyone involved. Once I was taking a taxi, and the driver said to me, "I served in the military in Lhasa." I asked, "How was it being in the army?" He said, "Oh, being in the army is like that, daily physical training. My health is pretty good." So he was especially motivated, wanting to find him, to track him down. He could also run fast thanks to his military-trained body. So among the crowd, among hundreds of people, when he was actively engaged in the pursuit of Huineng, he demonstrated exceptional speed and agility, proving himself to be the absolute fastest among all those involved. Indeed, he was the very first to reach the destination, because by then he had already left for 2 months. Maybe they had been tracking him all along. In many historical records and documentaries, this part doesn't seem very clear. They eventually caught up with him, but the details of what happened in between aren't described in detail. Huineng threw down the robe and bowl onto a rock, saying, this robe is just a symbol of faith. Can it really be fought over? Then he hid himself in the grass and bushes. Huineng placed the robe and bowl. When others came to track him down, he placed it on a rock. He said, although people called it a robe of transmission, in reality it was just a symbolic gesture. There's no need to fight for power and gain over this. He hid himself away. Huiming arrived and tried to pick up the robe and bowl, but couldn't move them. So he called out, "Traveler, traveler, I have come for the Dharma, not for the robe." When he finally arrived at the sacred place, he tried desperately to take the precious robe and the accompanying bowl from the unyielding rock. But no matter how incredibly hard he tried, he simply couldn't lift them at all. So when he was truly at a loss, he shouted loudly. He called out, "Traveler." He didn't say "good and wise one," because after all, Huiming had been a monk for many years. He first diligently followed the teachings and guidance of the fourth patriarch, and subsequently he continued his spiritual journey under the tutelage of the fifth patriarch for many years. Huineng had not yet outwardly revealed the appearance or taken on the formal robes of a monk. He said, "Traveler, oh traveler, please come out quickly now. I did not come for the precious robe and the sacred bowl. Even if he did, he truly couldn't take them with him anyway. He said, I came for the Buddha Dharma, not for the robe and bowl." He shouted this loudly, his voice echoing. Huineng then emerged and sat upon the rock. Huiming bowed respectfully and said, then he settled himself on the rock, quite possibly the very spot where the robe and bowl had just been placed. At this moment, Huiming bowed to him. "I hope the traveler will teach me the Dharma." Huineng said, "Since you have come for the Dharma, put aside all conditions, do not give rise to a single thought, and I will teach you." Huiming bowed to him and said he hoped Huineng would expound the teachings to him. the profound Dharma that you received from your master. Huineng said, if you truly came for the Dharma and not for the robe and bowl, then I can transmit it to you, but there is one condition. You must first completely let go of all worldly attachments and all persistent clinging. Do not give rise to any thoughts, whether good or bad. Only then can I teach you. After a considerably long period of contemplation and deep introspection, Huineng eventually spoke, revealing that it had taken him an extensive amount of time and profound effort before he was finally able to completely release and transcend all of his discriminating thoughts. At this point, seeing that the conditions were ripe, Huineng spoke. Think neither of good nor of evil. At just this moment, what is your original face, Venerable Ming? This is the deepest teaching in Chan Buddhism. Huineng imparted to him the true essential instruction of directly pointing to the nature of mind. At that moment in time, when all his various discriminating thoughts had completely subsided, Huineng then said to him, he said, do not think about good and do not think about evil either. In that profound state, there is no thought of either good or evil. Venerable Ming is a very respectful form of address for him. When I first started reading the Platform Sutra of the Sixth Patriarch, I might not have read the earlier parts carefully. I may have explained Venerable Ming incorrectly when I referenced it before. I remember that my way of explaining it was not correct, because I didn't connect it with the previous case. At that time it was said, do not cling to good, do not cling to evil, and in that very state. He was known as Venerable Ming because he was a revered monk who had, for a considerable period, diligently relied upon and learned from many wise and enlightened teachers. Therefore, Venerable Huiming, indeed Master Huiming, this is your inherent, authentic, and fundamental true nature. He used very respectful language to directly point this out to him. Recently, I saw in the treasury of Dharmadhatu a line that is the same as this. When you truly recognize your profound and inherent true nature, whether your mind is at complete rest or is scattered outwardly, engaging with the external world and its myriad distractions, at this time you should not focus on the part that is at rest. You should recognize the aspect of naked awareness. Do not focus on the part of discriminating thoughts that arise outwardly. You should recognize the aspect of naked awareness. This is what you need to recognize, your true original face. The treasury of Dharmadhatu also explains it this way. It is quite similar to this. For example, when a wholesome thought arises, you should not focus on that goodness. If you generate an unwholesome, discriminating thought, you should not focus on the unwholesome aspect either. But it is neither good nor evil. In our Vajrayana teachings, we speak of a kind of awakening. At that moment, there is a certain clarity of awareness. You need to recognize it. This is your true original face. So whether our mind is resting or our mind is generating discriminating thoughts, in any state, you should not try to abide anywhere. Some people, when meditating, always abide in a certain place, thinking that this is their true nature. Some people, when discriminating thoughts arise, some masters say, for every discriminating thought you have, there is that much awareness. The very moment when discriminating thoughts are arising, when the mind is moving, that is also not your true original face. So what is your true original face? At this moment, as we say in Vajrayana, it is a kind of naked awareness. It is neither abiding nor scattered nor good nor evil. In that very profound state, clearly and fully self-aware, where emptiness and luminous clarity are truly inseparable, although it is essentially a single mind, when you consciously use the mind to observe itself, there is this kind of wondrous state, and this state is your true original face. As His Holiness the Guru used to say, but these are Vajrayana teachings, so talking about them here might be a bit much. Let's talk about them later when we discuss Vajrayana. It's roughly like this. Actually, in Chan Buddhism, the understanding of one's true original face is indeed very profound. Huiming attained great enlightenment on the spot. Actually, it depends on whether one has the karmic connection or not. If you have the connection, whether among a group or alone, when the teaching is transmitted, it is just this very state. It was like this in ancient times, and it is the same now. This is true in Tibetan Buddhism as well as in Chinese Buddhism. Whenever anyone truly recognizes the original face of the mind in the present moment, there is no other state apart from this. At that moment, great enlightenment is attained. He further asked, apart from the secret words and meanings you have just spoken, is there an even deeper secret meaning? At that time, he was asking whether, besides the secret meaning conveyed in the previous words, is there an even deeper secret meaning? Apart from the topic I just introduced to you, is there anything more? Huineng said, what I told you is not secret. If you turn your awareness inward, the secret is right by your side. He said, what I have told you, is actually just like a finger pointing at the moon, a mere indicator, not the destination itself. It is merely an expression in words. The true, profound, and secret meaning, the genuine awakening, is to turn your awareness deeply inward and truly reflect upon yourself. When you look deeply within your own being, it is right there by your side, never truly separated from you or ever completely joined to anything else. It has never, even for a single instant, been apart from your true nature. It's just that, in fact, the great masters of the lineage in the past, some individuals expressed it through their carefully chosen words, while others conveyed it through their deliberate actions. In different and varied situations, they consistently used different and distinct methods. Our revered master also often spoke about this. Among all the people present at that moment, some of his profound and essential pith instructions, which were truly insightful, the deepest pith instructions were given directly. But each individual person's level of profound understanding and spiritual realization was distinctly different. Just yesterday, I had the distinct privilege to attend the sacred teachings on the revered Longchenpa. Although their particular tradition is indeed a kind of seven treasuries collection, it is absolutely essential for the future propagation and widespread dissemination of the profound Longchen Yingtik teachings. Many Dharma teachers are giving talks, and when many of them speak, those elder Dharma teachers from the time when our revered master was still alive, some of the things they said were indeed very profound. Some of the later Dharma teachers, although they are eloquent, are especially smart, very articulate, and have excellent speaking skills. But the words they express sometimes seem rather unfamiliar with the terminology of the secret teachings. Even when some people speak, they only talk about the terms and concepts on the surface, without going particularly deep. So later, when I communicated with them, I said, we need to maintain long-term faith in the Tantra teachings. We should engage in long-term listening, contemplation, and also practice meditation. When our revered master was still alive, the Tantra teachings at Larung were considered to be flourishing. Nowadays, I'm afraid it's not as flourishing as it used to be, whether it's practice, empowerment, or the transmission of teachings. In many respects, it's not as good as before. So I think that the disciples of the realized masters in the past, their words, actions, demeanor, including their faith and the realization they attained, were all different. Therefore, Chan Buddhism's principle of not relying on words and letters has its own profound meaning. But that doesn't mean that all of them. Some people say that Chan Buddhism does not rely on words, but isn't the platform sutra of the sixth patriarch made up of words? Actually, the meaning here is completely different. Although there are words, when true realization is attained, Chan Buddhism does not rely on words, and neither does Vajrayana Buddhism. Any higher level Dharma method uses some form of expression for understanding. The path to understanding requires language, words, and a teacher. Or through other causes and conditions, there is also realization. So just now, a truly great master like Huiming, a profound spiritual leader, relied entirely upon a single powerful sentence from Huineng. Think neither good nor evil. At just this very moment, what indeed is your original true face? For us who come after, for example, the fundamental principles and profound insights realized by each and every esteemed teacher, the language and words are already laid out here. It's up to us to see if we can use these to reflect on ourselves. People in the past also used this sentence for self-reflection, and they too could attain enlightenment. We who come after are also fully capable and have all kinds of opportunities. We too can attain enlightenment ourselves. So I hope that many of us here, whether you study Chan Buddhism or Vajrayana Buddhism, in fact, for someone who has realized the truth, all schools are harmonious and non-contradictory. At the level of ultimate meaning, there should be no real difference. In the past, a great master in Tibetan Buddhism once said this: each school claims that it is the most supreme, but who is truly supreme? For example, the Kalachakra Tantra says that Kalachakra is the best cause for attaining Buddhahood. The Hevajra Tantra says that Hevajra is the easiest path to Buddhahood. The Mahamaya Tantra claims that it is the easiest way to attain Buddhahood. So what is the truth? Then the master gave an analogy. For example, in a marketplace, there are especially fine horses of many different colors and varieties. Everyone always says, you should definitely buy my horse because this particular one is truly the best of them all. But in reality, it depends on which one you like. Actually, all the horses in the market are very good. They are all top quality horses. So which horse you ride, every merchant is saying it really depends on you. Some people don't ride any horse at all and just walk on their own. In that case, you don't even have the conditions to ride a horse. Some people say, oh, I won't listen to him, I want to choose this horse. So I choose this horse, and from then on, I have a connection with it. That's why I really agree with this analogy. I hope that in the future, whether it's Chan Buddhism or Vajrayana Buddhism, every master and every lineage will say theirs is very special. And indeed, within them, countless great masters have already attained enlightenment. So it depends on how we see it. If you think everyone is just boasting and so you don't ride any horse, if you just walk there, then you have no connection. But if you choose one and truly cherish it, you will definitely attain enlightenment. All right, that's all for today.
Bandara Badna Sodargye Bandara Badna Sodargye Bandara Badna Sodargye